A man spent months alone inside a tiny apartment, recording videotapes about a woman he had never met. He covered the walls with her photos, filled notebooks with obsessive thoughts, and eventually, he mailed a dangerous package directly to her home. What police discovered afterward looked less like a crime scene and more like the inside of a collapsing mind. His name was Ricardo López, quiet, isolated, living alone in Florida. Long before police discovered the tapes, the obsession had already begun. Ricardo lived in a tiny apartment with almost no social life. Most people described him the same way: quiet, insecure, and deeply withdrawn. He dreamed of becoming an artist, but every time he thought about pursuing it seriously, his confidence collapsed. He hated the way he looked, constantly wrote about feeling ugly, inferior, unwanted, and slowly, he escaped deeper into fantasy. By his late teens, Ricardo had developed an unhealthy fascination with celebrities. Not normal admiration, something deeper. He imagined emotional connections with people he had never met, entire relationships that only existed inside his head. Then, in 1993, he discovered Björk, a rapidly rising musician whose strange, emotional style was making her famous around the world. And from that moment on, everything changed. At first, Ricardo looked like any passionate fan, listening to her music constantly, watching interviews, collecting photos. At first, the apartment still looked normal, but month after month, the walls slowly disappeared behind posters, notes, videotapes, and paintings. The obsession kept growing. More writings, more photos, more tapes. Every corner of the apartment slowly began revolving around Björk. He wrote about her obsessively, notebook after notebook. Eventually, his journals reached hundreds of pages, filled with fantasies, insecurities, and thoughts about Björk. Sometimes he described her as his inspiration, his muse. Other times, he wrote about wanting to matter to her somehow, wanting to affect her life. Later, that sentence would feel very different. Soon, writing wasn't enough anymore. So, Ricardo bought a camera. On his 21st birthday, he stopped writing and started filming himself instead. At first, the tapes feel almost sad. Just a lonely man sitting in a cramped apartment, talking to a camera like it's a friend or a therapist. Behind him, the room looked cluttered and cramped. Dirty dishes, posters, paintings, videotapes stacked everywhere, and tape after tape. The apartment changed. More clutter, darker lighting, more isolation. It slowly stopped feeling like someone's home. You could actually watch his mental state changing. Most obsessions happen privately, but Ricardo recorded his. Sometimes, he would stare directly into the camera for long periods without speaking. Other times, he rambled about failure, loneliness, feeling invisible. Then, suddenly, he'd begin talking about Björk again. Always Björk. At one point, he admitted, "I couldn't have sex with Björk because I love her," which somehow made the obsession feel even stranger. This wasn't just attraction. It was emotional possession, fantasy, dependency. The camera slowly became his entire world, and over time, the tape stopped feeling like diaries and started feeling like warnings. Then, in 1996, Ricardo learned something that completely destroys him. Björk is dating another musician, a British artist and DJ named Goldie. For years, Björk had existed only inside Ricardo's fantasies, but now reality interrupted them. The moment he reads the news, the tone of the tapes changes immediately. He becomes angry, bitter, jealous, talking about betrayal, even though Björk had never met him. And this is where the obsession becomes dangerous. Because Ricardo begins convincing himself that he needs revenge. He starts talking about punishment, about making sure Björk never forgets him, no matter what. Then, he begins planning something horrifying. Inside the apartment, Ricardo starts gathering materials, tools, wires, containers, a hollowed-out book. The apartment no longer looked lived in. Wires across the floor, containers beside paintings, tools scattered across tables. The room looked less like an apartment and more like a mind falling apart. He carefully builds a hidden device designed to spray sulfuric acid when opened. And while doing it, the camera keeps recording, capturing every step, At one point, Saul, he wraps the device carefully in plastic, then attaches a fake shipping label pretending the package came from Björk's record company. He wanted it to look harmless, professional, safe. And somehow, that's what makes the whole thing worse. The calmness, the patience, the planning. The apartment sits silent for a moment, and the entire time, the camera keeps recording. September 12th, 1996. Ricardo turns on the camera one final time. The tape is titled Last Day. The atmosphere inside the apartment feels heavy. Dark lighting, clutter everywhere, music playing softly in the background. Ricardo looks nervous, sweating, talking rapidly, trying to calm himself down. But he continues anyway. Then he picks up the package and leaves for the post office. When he returns, his behavior becomes even stranger. He stands in front of a mirror, shaving his head, then his eyebrows, while the camera keeps recording in silence. Then he says something chilling. "I know exactly what I'm doing." And somehow, that line makes everything worse. Because this wasn't confusion. This was intention. Then suddenly, Ricardo disappears. Days pass. No one sees him. No one hears from him. Until neighbors begin noticing a terrible smell coming from the apartment. Ricardo had taken his own life inside the apartment. Police arrive and force the door open. Inside, the apartment looked frozen in time. Videotapes stacked across the floor. Writings everywhere. Photos covering the walls. Evidence of obsession in every corner. Investigators begin watching the tapes and quickly realize they're watching months of psychological deterioration captured on camera. Almost like watching someone sink deeper into madness in real time. But then police discover something even worse. The package had already been mailed, and it was heading directly toward Björk's home in London. Authorities immediately contact Scotland Yard, and suddenly, it becomes a race against time, because somewhere inside the postal system was a dangerous package disguised as a harmless gift. And nobody knew how close it was to being delivered. Luckily, the package was intercepted before it reached Björk and safely detonated. She was never harmed. But inside Ricardo's apartment, investigators found something almost more unsettling than the device itself. Months of videotapes documenting a mind collapsing in real time, and decades later, those recordings remain one of the clearest windows into obsession ever captured on camera.